Hello! If you're new here, my name is Shelly, and if you like talking about true crime, serial killers, and conspiracy theories and that kind of thing, and you also like talking about makeup, then you should definitely stick around and become a part of the family. This is the second time I've tried to record this video because earlier today my neighbors were being the loudest they have ever been. The backyards in this neighborhood are tiny, and he was mowing his yard for like 2 hours, so I feel like he wasn't actually mowing. I think he was just like a dad who finally got the chance to get all of his tools out, so he was just being as loud as possible. Anyways, this is day 2 of my 13-day countdown to Halloween that I do every single year on my YouTube channel. And we're going to be talking about John Wayne Gacy today, and I just want to tell you really quick that if you haven't gone over to Instagram and entered my giveaway, then you should totally do that. In order to enter, you just have to be following me on Instagram and subscribe to me on YouTube, and then DM me on Instagram with a screenshot saying that you are indeed subscribed, and then that's your proof and that's your entry. It is completely free to enter. And then don't worry, there are extra entries if that's not enough for you. In order to get a second entry, every time you share one of my 31 days of Halloween looks on Instagram to your story and tag me, that counts as an extra entry. I will be doing 31 days of Halloween over on my Instagram, so that's what I'll be doing. So you will potentially have at least 31 extra ways to enter. The winner will be announced on Halloween, and without further ado, I'm gonna get into the video. A YouTuber named Georgia Marie, and she did a really good video on John Wayne Gacy that I came across whenever I was doing research. But Georgia Marie has the best detailed video that I've come across. It's like 50 something minutes long. It's about an hour. But if you are looking for every single detail, all the names, everything, then definitely watch her video. I feel like when I talk about these things, it's more of a conversational way of talking about serial killers, but when she talks about them, I feel like it's more of an educational way. So if you want that vibe, I highly suggest her video, or I mean, even if you want to check out her video after you watch this video, that's great too. I just wanted to throw that out there because she did such a good job with it, and I feel like if you are interested in this case, then you should definitely watch her video. Anyways, let's get started. So John Wayne Gacy Jr. was born March 17th, 1942. in Chicago, Illinois. He was named after his father, who was John Stanley Gacy, and his mother was named Marion Gacy. They named John after his father, but they also named him after John Wayne, the American, like all-American hero, because his dad, John Sr., isn't that what you call, like there's junior and then there's senior? I'm not sure how all of that works. John Wayne Gacy's dad wanted him to be like an all-American boy. He wanted him to shoot guns, play football, be super sporty. He wanted like the stereotypical American male. I don't really know how else to say it, but I think you get what I mean. So he had these expectations for him, but that's just not how he was. He enjoyed spending time with his 2 sisters and his mother. He helped his mom around the house and he helped her in her garden. He was not into the things that his dad was into. He was close with his sisters and he was really close to his mother. And there was one interview with his sister, and his sister said that it seemed like his dad was jealous of him and his mother's relationship, and he felt like they were keeping secrets from him. The father was a raging alcoholic. He was super violent and he abused all 3 children, but especially his son, John. His father would constantly like bully him and tell him that he was a sissy. He would insult him. He would remind him that he was overweight, because in order to help comfort him, his mother Marion would use food as a way of trying to comfort him. They also found out that he had congenital heart arrhythmia, And so this prevented him from being able to play any sports. And remember, his dad wanted him to be like this football jock, all-American, stereotypical boy. But not only was that not what he was interested in, but he physically couldn't be that. And so he did gain weight just because he couldn't exercise, and his mother also tried to comfort him through food. And whenever John Gacy was 6 years old, he was hit in the head with a broom and he was knocked unconscious for a few minutes. Not only did it happen at 6 years old, but it also happened when he was 11 years old. He got hit in the head with a swing and got knocked out for a few minutes. Now, I don't know how true this is because I only saw it on one source, but they said that his father would use a leather and razor strap on the kids. So I don't know, that just seems like a lot to me. So in 1954, Gacy joined the Boy Scouts, and he actually had a friend in the Boy Scouts who he trusted and he confided in, and he told this friend that he stole his mom's bra and underwear and he would put them on and wear them, look at himself in the mirror, and it made him feel good about himself. And this was something that he didn't tell very many people. He heard his dad say that he would rather his son be dead than find out that he was a homosexual. I feel like from the beginning Gacy was just very afraid of that side of him because of how his father treated him. Gacy was an average student, and in school he just kind of made average grades. He wasn't like super bullied or anything. He just had like the average school life, aside from the fact that he had to go to the hospital multiple times, so his grades weren't the best, but other than that it was pretty normal. He did like to suck up to authority. If anyone was over him, he was always trying to impress them or something. So all of his teachers, he would like be really nice to them and suck up to them and really put in a lot of effort making them like him. Like he wanted to be the teacher's pet and that sort of thing. Around 18 or 19 years old, he started trying to get into the printing trade at school, but the teacher said that it wasn't a good idea because he suffered from a lot of blackouts from being hit in the head, and the teacher said that it just wasn't safe for him to be working around the machinery and that kind of thing. So he went into politics and he became the assistant precinct captain for the Democratic Party. You can probably guess by now that his father was like diehard Republican. So this was just another thing that his father just didn't take too well. One day his dad actually bought John a car, but at first it was just a really nice thing that he did, but it turned into just another way to control him, because anytime John did something that his father disapproved of, he would take the keys and wouldn't let him go anywhere. And then one day, John was tired of it. He got sick of his father being able to control him like that, and he actually went and got a set of spare keys. And then with this set of spare keys, whenever his father took away the first set, he could just take the second set and then go wherever he wanted. And then his father got so mad that he took the distributor cap out of the car. This just made John mad. So he put the distributor cap back into the car, and then he just drove off and made his way to Las Vegas, Nevada. So he basically ran away from home at this point, and in Las Vegas he gets a job working at Palm Mortuary. Not only did he work there, but he also stayed there. So he slept in a cot right next to the embalming room, which is super creepy. Now later on in interviews, John says that working and living there was super lonely, and one night he climbed into the coffin with a teenage boy's body, and he just kind of embraced and caressed the boy's body, and he liked it a lot, and it scared him because this was his first like real homosexual experience, and I think it scared him and he really resented that part of him, and I think that's just because of how his father treated him. So it scared him so much that he wanted to move away from there, and he called his mother and asked if he could move back home, and she told him yes, it would be perfectly fine if he moved back home. Whenever he moved back home, he started taking classes at Northwestern Business College and got into a trainee management position at Nunn Bush Shoe Company, and he did really well. By 1964, the business transferred him to Springfield, Illinois, to become a shoe salesman because he was very enthusiastic and they just knew that he would be able to sell things really well. He joined the local JC's, which is the United States Junior Chamber, and he did really well in this society, if you call it, and he volunteered for everything. He did, I guess, not like charity work, but I think that's basically how I would describe it. He volunteered like for everything. Every opportunity that came up for him to volunteer something, he did it. One man that he worked with at the JC's said that yes, John Gacy volunteered for everything and he was very involved in everything, but whenever he did something, he always wanted recognition for it. He was over the recruitment for the JC's, just like recruiting new members and finding more people to join, and he did so well that he became president of the Springfield JC's, and he was named the third most outstanding man among the JC's. And at work, he had a coworker named Marlon Myers, and Marlon Myers was a bookkeeper, and she came from a very prominent and wealthy family in the area. So I feel like it was because of that Gacy took an interest in her. And just shortly after they met, they got married, and they had their first child pretty soon after they got married. And while Marlon was in the hospital in labor, Gacy was out at a bar with a fellow member of the JC's, and he actually went home with this man, yeah, while his wife is in the hospital in labor. A+ right there, jeez. But he actually goes home with this man, and he says the next morning he woke up completely naked and they had had intercourse, but he didn't remember any of it, and said that he just got too drunk. And right after he got up, went to the hospital to meet his son. And a couple years later, they end up having a baby girl. And then he got a job opportunity from Marlon's side of the family because her father owned a few KFC restaurants, and her father offered to have Gacy manage one of the KFCs. So he said that he was looking for a new line of work to learn anyways, so it was perfect, and the family moved off to Waterloo, Illinois. So of course John was still a member of the JC's, so he had to transfer over to the JC's in the area that they had just moved to. And this is whenever he became the official chairman of the membership drive. Him and Marlon were known for throwing huge swing parties, and a swing party is whenever a bunch of couples get together and they party, and they actually like switch partners around for the night or however long. And so they did this a lot, and they actually invited all of the high-ranking officials, all of the prominent members in the society, and even officers. So the police were involved, and they were really close with the police department. They were really close with all of the politicians in the area. Any person that was significant at all, Gacy would befriend them and charm them, make them really like him. They organized orgies with prostitutes, and he would screen porn. And this is how he recruited people into the JC's, and the JC's were well aware of everything that he did, but they just didn't care because One night he got them 20 members just in that one night, so they didn't really care how he was doing it because they were getting members. And in August of 1967 is when Gacy finds his first sexual assault victim. And all of the people that he had been recruiting were teenage boys, and this particular boy was a 15-year-old, and he invited him to his house, and he was like, "Hey, have you ever seen porn before?" And the boy was like, "No, I haven't." So he showed him one of the porn movies, and he also let him drink alcohol. So I'm sure in that 15-year-old's mind, he thought that it was really cool that an adult is letting him do these things. But little did he know that Gacy would be forcing himself on him by the end of the night. And whenever he's done, he gives the boy $50 and says, "Don't tell anyone, and even if you did, no one would believe you." And when this boy went home, this completely changed his personality. He became very closed, and before, he was really open with his parents and he had a really good relationship with them, but then all of a sudden he was closed off and he didn't want to tell them anything. And then it took him about a year to tell his parents what had happened and what Gacy did to him. And his family was very high up in the society. They were very powerful. So this family was able to get Gacy charged with sodomy, and this made him really mad. He completely denied it. He got angry. He said it was consensual, and then he got so mad and he was so wanting them to believe him that he even said, "Give me a lie detectors test and I'll show you." But guess what? He failed it. He even hired an employee that worked for him at KFC to go and assault the boy and to threaten him not to press charges and not to tell anyone, like just not to drag anything out further and or to deny it. And whenever this happened, the boy just went straight to the police and told them exactly what happened and how an employee that works for Gacy at the KFC threatened him. Then the police arrested Gacy and he was charged with sodomy. He actually pleads guilty, and the judge gives him 10 years at the state penitentiary. And at the state penitentiary, he walks in on 2 of the male inmates having intercourse, and this like makes him explode, and he completely changes and he beats them. And I think that's just like another example of how he hated that part of himself from how his dad treated him. And so anytime anyone reminded him of that part of himself, it just triggered something in him. But he actually did really well in prison because he was a good cook at KFC. He started working in the kitchen at the prison, and all of the inmates loved him because he completely changed their diet and improved it. And all of the officers that worked in the prison, they all loved him as well because, like we talked about earlier, he loved to suck up to authority. And anytime anyone was like over him, he just felt the need to get them to like him, and he wanted to charm them. Now, because he did so well in prison and because of his good behavior, he got out on parole after just 18 months. So he did not spend the full 10 years in jail at all. And whenever he was out on parole, he went to live with his mother because he didn't have any money or anything. Before I get too far ahead, while he was in prison, he got the news that his father had passed away, and Gacy was just convinced completely that his father had died from shame, because whenever he had his wife and he had this nice job, his relationship with his father was actually doing okay. Now that he was kind of a man in his father's eyes, he had this job, this business, he was doing really well, he had this beautiful wife, he had children. Just being put into prison, in his mind, that's what killed his father, because he was so ashamed of Gacy. But his sister tried to reason with him and tell him, no, it was his liver, the alcohol caught up with him, it wasn't you, he didn't die of shame. But Gacy was completely convinced that it was him, and no one could tell him otherwise. And he would like completely switch personality personalities and just like turn on people. Anyways, back to when he was getting out. He was living with his mother in Chicago and he only had a 10 o'clock curfew. He started working as a cook in a restaurant and he was trying to save up money at this point in time. February 1971, he ends up sexual assaulting another teenage boy. And this teenage boy went to the authorities and everything, but then whenever it was time to take it to court, the teenage boy did not show up, so nothing happened and the case didn't really go anywhere. This case is so frustrating to me because it's like there's so many times when they could catch him and there are so many times when they had just kept him in jail, or if they had just charged him when they were supposed to. Like, this case is just a lot and it's very frustrating. By June of that year, he had enough money saved up to buy his own house. So whenever he got put in jail, his wife divorced him and took the 2 kids, and she basically left him. And now that he's out, he gets engaged to his high school sweetheart named Carol Hoff, and this woman was divorced and she had 2 daughters. And whenever they got married, Gacy really took them in as his own children. The girls called him dad. The girls loved him. I mean, at this point, like, he was still volunteering at every chance he could get, and so he would entertain the girls. He liked to dress up as a clown and volunteer like at children's hospitals and stuff. So the girls loved him and they loved being around him. They just thought the world of him. He was a really good father to them. Always said that he would never treat a kid how his father treated him and that he would never hit a kid. Anyways, he really did love the girls and he was really close to them. He was the Democratic precinct captain. He threw block parties and he was admired by the police, and he just starts thriving yet again in society. He started his own business that was actually pretty successful. It was called PDM Contractors. It stands for painting, decorating, and maintenance. He was very active in the community, and again, he started volunteering. It was like his life before prison all over again. He was super successful. Everyone loved him. He had everyone wrapped around his finger. There was an interview where he said that he just volunteered because what you put out in the world will come back to you, which is very... kind of crazy that he would say that, you know? Anyways, so he was volunteering and dressing up as a clown at like children's parties and that kind of thing. He liked dressing up as Pogo or Patches the Clown, and because it regressed him back into childhood, and he said that he could just let go and feel free and be who he felt like he wanted to be. And he could let himself go and act a fool. I believe those were his words in the interview. So around this time, John felt safe enough to open up to Carol about how he was bisexual. And if anyone said that he was gay, he would get really offended and he would say, "No, I am bisexual." And he told her that he was attracted to men and that he did not want to have intercourse with her anymore. And he got into the habit of bringing men home all of the time. Him and Carol just kind of lived together, but they never like did anything with each other. And actually on New Year's in 1972, they went to a New Year's party celebrating, and Carol got drunk and she said that she wouldn't be coming home and that she was just gonna stay there at the party all night and then come home the next day. She said that she was too wasted, too drunk to go anywhere, which, you know, be responsible, kids. Honestly, a lot of people aren't responsible. But if you're too drunk, just be aware and be responsible. And John was home alone without his wife, and he took this as an opportunity to pick up a teenage boy. He found a 16-year-old at the bus stop. He was waiting for a bus and gonna take a tour of Chicago. So John pulls up and he says, "I can show you around." So he gets in the car with him and he ends up actually going home with Gacy, and they had a great night. They had sexual intercourse. And in the morning, John Gacy woke up in bed and he saw the kid standing in the doorway with a knife. Gacy just freaks out. This man is super paranoid and he thinks that this kid is gonna kill him. So Gacy freaks out, grabs the knife, and gets on top of the kid and stabs him in the chest multiple times. And later on, he says that this actually sexually satisfied him, if you get what I'm saying, which is nasty. But anyways, so he saw what he had done. He saw that he had just made this huge mess and he killed this kid. But in his mind, he was defending himself. And then whenever he walked out of the room and into the kitchen, he saw that there was eggs and there was bacon and there was all of this breakfast stuff that this kid had gotten up early and made them both breakfast. And he had a kitchen knife, not because he was gonna kill him, but just because he had been cooking. So of course John Gacy starts freaking out, like, oh my gosh, I just killed this kid. Automatically he just thinks that he needs to cover it up. Buries him in the crawl space of his home or underneath his home. Not too long after that, he assaults a boy at the restaurant that he works at, and the boy escapes him and starts running down the street, and Gacy started chasing him, but he got bored or just gave up after a little bit and stopped chasing the boy. And at this point in time, the police had a lot of cases already apparently, so they just let him off with a warning. John figured out that he liked to rape and kill teenage boys, but the first victim that he actually killed, he knew that it was too messy because he stabbed him in the chest and it was too much work to clean up and there was too much everywhere. So after that, he decided that he would continue to kill, but he would just strangle them so that it wouldn't make too much of a mess. So John was still running his contracting business and he had hired a 15-year-old boy, and one day he was alone with this boy and he tried to assault him. He even put him in handcuffs. Sometimes he would dress up as a clown because that's the persona that he felt comfortable in. And so as this clown, he would do a bunch of magic tricks and different things, and one of his magic tricks included handcuffs. And so a lot of the time he would be messing around with the teenage boys, having them put on handcuffs, saying he was going to do a magic trick with them, and then he would attack them while they were handcuffed and that sort of thing. But this particular 15-year-old boy was a wrestler and he was really good. He was able to fight Gacy off and escape. While he was in this persona, a lot of people said that he would growl at them. He would be nice and playful at first, but then he would completely switch and be just this super creepy and aggressive clown, and he would rape and he would torture the victims. Sometimes instead of immediately burying the victims, he would keep them in the house for a day or two and then finally bury them. Gacy had another employee that was a teenage boy. He pretty much only hired teenage boys, but he came to his house to collect his wages for the week. You know, Gacy had told him to stop by my house and I'll give you your paycheck. And so he did stop by the house, but he was just another victim to Gacy. And this boy had told his family where he was going and that he was going to grab his paycheck. So the family highly suspected him. But whenever they went to the police were basically just like, he's a runaway. Gacy didn't do anything. He's just a kid that ran away. And that was it. Now around this time, Gacy and Carol's divorce was completely finalized, and when people asked them why they got a divorce, they would say that Gacy cheated on her with other women, but it was not the truth. They just didn't want to tell people that Gacy said he was bisexual and didn't want to have sex with her anymore. He was also quite abusive to poor Carol. He was always yelling at her and telling her that she was doing everything wrong and how she spent too much money and yada yada yada. So I'm sure that she was really glad to get out of that relationship, honestly. At this point, Gacy was home completely alone all the time, and this just gave him the freedom to do whatever he wanted to whoever he wanted. He wasn't really sad about their separation. He just saw this as an opportunity because he had the house to himself, so he didn't like have to wait until Carol was gone or anything. The statistics are that he killed 1 to 2 boys a month. There was a man named David Cram who Gacy had as an employee, and David Cram needed a place to stay, so he starts living with Gacy. I don't know, it's just a little creepy how he finally felt free to be able to do whatever he wanted to do without worrying about anyone else in the house, but then all of a sudden he lets this guy move in with him. Super suspicious. Gacy actually hires this man to dig trenches underneath his house, like in his crawl space. He told him that it was just for piping or for draining because it flooded under his house a lot. And he also told him to spread lime under the house, which is a chemical that a lot of people use to cover the smell of dead bodies, if I'm not mistaken. But he didn't really think anything of it. He really believed Gacy when he said that it was for piping or draining. One day Gacy gets home and David is covered in mud, and he actually like freaks out on him because he thought that he had been in the crawl space and he thought that he had seen the bodies, and then David was like, dude, you told me to go down there and dig and stuff, and then Gacy just completely flipped out on them. And it was like he didn't remember telling him to go down there. There was another instance where David gets home and Gacy is just sitting in the living room in his clown costume, and he tells David to put on handcuffs, so he did. And then whenever he had him in handcuffs, he started singing in like his creepy clown voice that he was going to rape him. Now, I don't know about you, but that would completely scar me for life. I don't think I've ever told you guys this, but I'm like completely terrified of clowns. I hate clowns with a passion. No. Just no. Gacy starts making fun of David and drags him around, and he just kind of gets really violent, and David just runs off, and at least he escapes him. But I mean, the whole situation is really creepy and terrifying. He moved out pretty much immediately after. There were several months of many boys going missing, and one boy in particular went missing, and they actually found his car abandoned in a nearby town. And this guy actually worked for Gacy as well, and whenever the family asked Gacy if he had heard from him, because he just went missing out of the blue. You know, I feel like one of the first things that happens is when someone doesn't come home or just goes missing, you call into their work and see if they showed up. That's just like one of the first things that you do. And so that's what the parents were doing. But Gacy said that he had a voicemail from him, and he told him that he was going to be skipping town, that he was going to be running away. Whenever they asked to hear the voicemail, Gacy said that he deleted it. I swear, every time I do clown makeup, I just reach a certain point where it's hard to even look in the mirror. There was a boy who was acquaintances of a few of Gacy's victims, and he was about the same age. Like, they were in the same age group. And Gacy found this kid, and he told him that he wanted to buy his car, so the kid sold the car to him. But later he sold it to his roommate, who was named Michael Rossi, who was a teenager. Michael Rossi was caught stealing, and whenever the police ran his plates, the plates came up under John Gacy's name. They knew that it had been one of the boys' car who went missing, so whenever they asked Gacy about it, he told him that the kid came to him and said that he needed money, so then Gacy offered to buy his car from him. He abducts a 19-year-old at a bus station because that's just one of the common places that he went. And he was raping and torturing this man after he took him back to his house. And this, I guess, young man, he was 19, begged him to kill him. And then Gacy said, "I'm getting around to it." But he never actually killed him. He actually just took the kid back where he found him, and that was it. And he went to the police, but the police didn't do anything because Gacy said that it had been consensual and they believed him. So the final victim to be buried in the crawl space was another 19-year-old. And this was because he just ran out of room. He had 26 bodies in the crawl space of his home, 1 body under the garage, and then the rest of his victims he actually dropped into the river. Gacy was going around town, and at this point in time, gay men would just kind of walk around town, meet each other, find each other, and then they would kind of decide to do the deed with each other. They would usually never speak to each other again. So that's kind of what Gacy did a lot, and he picked up a 26-year-old named Jeffrey Brignall. I think that's how you pronounce his name. But he was lured into Gacy's car and chloroformed immediately. After he raped and tortured him, he took his unconscious body to Lincoln Park and dumped him. Whenever he woke up, he could only remember what type of car he saw. He couldn't really remember who it was or what had happened, but he did remember what the person's car looked like before he got in. And he was able to get up and walk all the way to his girlfriend's house. And whenever he got there, his face had been burned pretty bad because Gacy had tortured him. Now, the police would not help him at all after he went to them, and again, they acted like they were too busy. They said that they had too many cases and they couldn't worry about that right now. So him and a group of friends just kind of took it upon themselves to find whoever did this. If something like that happened to you and you don't think your friends would help you find the guy that did it if the police weren't doing anything, y'all, get you some new friends. Jeffrey had some good friends apparently. Now, one of the last murders was 15-year-old Robert Peace, and this is the one that got the attention of the police finally, right? I just took a break and ate a bunch of Flaming Hot Cheetos, and now I'm questioning my life decisions. But before I go into everything that happened with him, I don't think that I mentioned that police actually arrested him because that one guy and his friends found the car, and then they told police about it, and then the police finally arrested him on a battery charge, and he was still awaiting trial for it whenever he went to jail later on. But let me tell you all about 15-year-old Robert Pierce and why that was the one that got the police's attention. So Gacy goes to a pharmacy to, you know, get things that you would get at a pharmacy. And while he's there, he had some type of deal with the owner, and so he goes and starts talking to the owner, and he kind of sees Robert kind of standing off to the side, and Robert is working at the pharmacy and he's making $5 an hour. So Gacy knows all of this. So while he's talking to the owner about their business deal or whatever they have going on, he kind of casually mentions that he hires young teenage boys and he pays $10 an hour, which is twice Robert was making at the pharmacy. Before Gacy left, Robert approached him and said that he was interested in the job in looking into what Gacy could hire him for. And Gacy told him, "Come find me when you get off and then we'll talk." And he was basically like, "I'll be outside," or something creepy honestly disturbing. So Robert was 15 years old, so he did not drive yet. So whenever his mother got there to pick him up, he told his mom that he had someone he needed to talk to regarding a new job that could possibly pay more. So he puts on his coat and then he goes out back to talk to Gacy, and his mother is in there waiting for him, but he never comes back inside. Now, obviously, the mom freaks out and they start looking for him. They don't find him anywhere, but the owner of the store knew who he went to talk to because he was right there when they had that conversation. So his mother filed a missing persons report, and the police really got onto this one because I think that there was a rumor that Robert Pierce was a nephew to one of the policemen, and that's why they were really wanting to find him. And also, he was a really good student. He was a really good kid. A lot of people in that town knew him, and they knew what kind of character he had, and they just knew that this was something that he would not do. They knew that he wasn't a runaway because that was their excuse. Every other kid that went missing was that it was just a runaway, but everyone knew that this kid would not run away. So the police go to Gacy's house, and then they basically tell him, we need to talk to you and question you, and Gacy tells them that he will meet them at the station later that evening, and he did, but he didn't get there until almost 4 a.m. And whenever he did arrive, he was covered in mud. Before he got there, he had to dump Robert Pierce's body, and whenever he was dumping his body off the bridge, because remember, he was throwing bodies in the river at this point because he had no more room, he got into a car wreck and his car slid off the road. Now, of course, to the police, this is super sketchy. The police did not believe that he was in a car wreck. They were just like, something is going on. So when he was finally talking to the police, he told the police that he had no idea who they were talking about. He had never seen the kid before, and he didn't know who the kid was. Now, this probably would have worked with the police in the town where Gacy was from, but this was in the next town. So these policemen didn't fall for it because they were not close to him like the other policemen were. They weren't invited to all of his parties like the other ones were. So these policemen in this new town, not new town, but the town over from where he lived, started looking into his background and saw that he had a lot of accusations against him and a lot of charges against him, and they basically figured out that this dude was not as nice as he seems. On December 13th, a judge ordered a search on Gacy's house, and they found a lot of various items from different teenage boys that had gone missing. They found driver's licenses, they found a gun, they found a 1975 high school class ring with the letters JS on it. They found a gun, and they also found a receipt from the pharmacy the night that Robert Pierce went missing from that exact pharmacy. And this receipt is special because it wasn't a receipt from what Gacy had bought. It wasn't his receipt. It was a receipt that was in Robert Pierce's parka. One of Robert's co-workers, she borrowed his jacket. He let her borrow his coat, and she had to run an errand, and whenever she ran that errand, she put the receipt in his coat and then forgot to take it out. So then whenever Gacy had Robert, he took the receipt as a memento, but he didn't know that it had been this girl's receipt who borrowed his jacket earlier. So that really helped the police put everything together. They confiscated his car, and they put up 2 different teams of surveillance, had 2 officers each, and they were to keep an eye on him and his home 24/7. Now at this point, Michael Rossi kind of learned about what was happening and how Gacy was getting in trouble, so he called the police to tell them everything that he knew, and that he had a friend that had gone missing and he suspected Gacy of it, and how he lived there with him and he would make him go and spread lime in the crawl space and also dig trenches, but then they later put it together that he was having him dig graves. Gacy tried really hard to manipulate these policemen, but they knew that he was super suspicious, because whenever he was trying to like suck up to them by taking them to bars and buying them drinks, one minute he would act like they were his best friends, and then the next bar they went to, he would tell everyone that they were the FBI and that they were harassing him for no reason. He even tried to file a harassment case against the police, and he was just like really trying every single thing that he could to make it seem like the police were picking on him for no reason. So along with Michael Rossi, David Cram was interviewed by the police, and he told them about the time when he got home and Gacy was waiting for him, sitting on the couch in his clown costume, and how creepy he was acting and how he said that he was going to rape him. And so with Michael Rossi and David Cram together, the police were able to figure out like where he would put the bodies and all of that sort of thing, what this guy was really up to. And Gacy was just fighting them so hard. He was being really scrappy in trying to make it seem like the police were just blaming him for this for no reason, and he was really trying to butter up the police, and none of it was working, and this was really stressing him out. And one day, the lawyers that he had been trying to file a harassment report on the police through, he went to their office. And as soon as he gets there, he asks for a drink. He said he needed a drink. So they give him a glass of whiskey. And he saw a picture of Robert Pierce in the newspaper, and he said, "He's dead. His body is in the river." And he spent all day just telling the lawyers every single detail about everything that he did. And of course, these lawyers were supposed to be on his side, and then all of a sudden he comes to them and tells them all of the horrible things that he was doing. Can you imagine how they would feel? Oh my god. And also that day he drove around to everyone that he knew, basically saying goodbye to everyone. He even visited his father's grave. So at this point, the police were really scared that Gacy would do something dangerous, like kill himself, because of the way that he was acting and how he was saying goodbye to everyone and just confessing everything. So the police wanted to arrest him just to make sure that he didn't. So they got a second warrant to search his crawl space at his house. So the police figured out that Gacy had given the pharmacist some weed, so they were able to arrest him on those charges. And then finally the police got the second warrant, and while they had Gacy in their custody, he had chest pains and they had to take him to the hospital. So while the police were searching his house, Gacy was at the hospital. Whenever they got to his house, Gacy had turned the pump off under his house in the crawl space, and he just let it flood, and the police had to wait until all of the water pumped out. I don't know, what would you say? They turned the pump on and then they waited for it to take all the water out. So the forensic examiner, Dr. Robert Stein, was the one who kind of was in charge of going in there and seeing if there were bodies. There were like 2 officers that went up and searched the attic, and then there were 2 more officers that went down and searched the crawl space. And whenever this forensic, it didn't take him very long before he found the first body. Apparently he had only dug down a couple of inches before he found a bone, and he turned around and told the officers, "Gacy can be charged with murder. I think this place is full of kids." As soon as the detectives hear this, they go straight to the hospital where Gacy was being discharged. Gacy said that he wanted to fully admit everything, but whenever he was admitting to everything, he said that the only people that he killed were prostitutes and runaways, people that didn't matter. But of course the police were like, that's bull, you know? So Gacy is sitting there telling them everything that he did, and he draws them out a map of his crawl space and where every single body was, and where all of the holes were and how many bodies were in each hole. he just gives them like a lot of details on where all of the bodies are, so then the police are able to go and find all of them. Right around this time, it was December, and then it was about January whenever they started the excavation, and then there was a huge snowstorm, so they had to wait a couple of months for all of that to go away before they could finish excavating the crawl space. They found several victims. They also found the victims in the river as well. So not only did they search the crawl space, but they searched the river. Robert Peace was the last body that they found, and they found him entangled in some roots that were by the river, and he had been suffocated. His cause of death was suffocation, and there was a piece of clothing shoved down his throat. Many of the victims either still had a tourniquet around their neck, which is what he used to kill them. A tourniquet is something that you use like to tie around someone's leg so that they don't bleed out, but he would use a rope or whatever he could find as a tourniquet, and some of them were even found with like bags still on their head and everything. But he said that he would just play around with them and then tell them that he was going to show them a trick, because he was a clown and that's what he did. He showed people tricks, and his trick that he showed them was putting a rope over their neck, and then he would start strangling them. Most of the bodies still had something around their neck, and some even had stuff shoved down their throat still. I know one of the boys, his cause of death was his underwear being shoved down his throat, which is it's just messed up. A lot of the victims also had various objects in their pelvic regions, and most of the bodies were so far decomposed that they were unrecognizable, so they relied on x-rays and dental records or personal belongings that they found on the bodies. But even then, a bunch of the bodies were still unknown. So Gacy was on trial for 33 murders, and they were in Cook County, but they could not find a jury in Cook County because his case was so big and so popular. They couldn't use anyone from that county, so they had to use the people from the next town over. They did over 300 hours of psychological tests because the lawyers on Gacy's side, their argument was that he was a paranoid schizophrenic with DID, which is dissociative identity disorder, but back then they called it multiple personality disorder. The lawyers on his side were trying really hard to make it sound like he was mentally insane, or that mentally he didn't know what he was doing. The other side also had doctors analyze him, and the doctors all said that he was fit for trial and that he knew exactly what he was doing, because a lot of it was premeditated, and he would go out and find boys, and he knew exactly what he was doing. And because he was tried for 33 murders, there was no way that you could make the same mistake 33 different times. They also said that he was a psychopath, and there was too much effort that went into the killings in order for him to commit these murders due to being a paranoid schizophrenic with DID. They were trying to get everyone to believe that he did have certain mental issues, was so that he could go into an institution, and then in the institution he could show everyone that he wasn't, I don't know how to say it, that he wasn't a schizophrenic with DID, and then after a little bit they would just release him back out into the public. And that was not something that the other side could let happen, because I mean, he had already been in jail, and then whenever he got out the first time, look what happened. So let's put this guy away for life. So the jury got together, and it took them less than 2 hours to decide that he was guilty of 33 accounts of murder and 2 accounts of rape, and also indecency to minors. He got the death sentence, and after he was in jail, he was still trying to convince people that he wasn't guilty, and it just wasn't working. One day he would say that he would get drunk and pass out and black out, and he didn't know what he was doing or who he was, and then he would wake up and not remember anything that happened. And it was just even while he was in jail with the death sentence, he was still trying to get out of it. While he was in prison, he wrote a book called Question of Doubt, and he said that he was the 34th victim, and he also read lots of law books. He picked up quite a few hobbies. He did some paintings, and these paintings are selling for a lot of money, and it's basically like paintings of him as a clown and that type of thing. I don't know who would spend as much money as people are spending on that, but okay. So John Wayne Gacy's last meal was a family picnic on prison grounds, but for his last meal he picked a bucket of chicken from KFC, because the good old days, fried shrimp, french fries, strawberries, and a Diet Coke. A Diet Coke to wash it all down. Whenever he went to be executed, the IV was blocked, and they ended up having to do it twice because it did not work the first time. The whole thing took about 18 minutes to kill him, and there was a crowd of people rooting for him to die. And I mean, there were some protesters protesting the death sentence, but the majority of people outside were people just wanting this guy to die because he raped and tortured and killed so many teenage boys. Afterwards, they took his brain out. They ended up removing his brain, and they gave it to a woman named Dr. Helen Morrison, and she was like this serial killer expert. I heard about this from Georgia Marie's video. So they gave it to her because she had spent so many hours with different serial killers and she had studied them. They wanted to see if there was something that could explain what he did in his brain, but unfortunately there's really nothing in the brain that can like prove this sort of thing. I don't know. On that note, I just think that this guy, he's a mess. Let's just leave it at that. I mean, first of all, a clown. Like, I keep seeing myself in the monitor and I'm just like, ew. You know, I hate clowns. Oh, funny story. If you've made it this far, leave a clown emoji down below if you made it this far, and I will love you for it. I don't know if Keisha's watching this video, but if you are, hi Keisha. So my friend from school, her name is Keisha, and her mom was, both of her parents actually, they were both clowns. I think they both went to clown college. And I've always been terrified of clowns. No, I don't get it. I think they're creepy. I do not get why people like them or think they're funny. I don't understand why kids think they're funny and so entertaining. I think they're terrifying and creepy, and I feel like any clown that I ever see is gonna automatically kill me. Anyways, so for Spirit Week at our school, one day her mother came dressed as a clown, and I was on stage because we were practicing a song, and she snuck up behind me, tapped me on my shoulder, and when I turned around, like no joke, I felt my arm like almost fly up and just like get her in the face. And I'm so glad that I realized like who it was before I did, because like I would have smacked a teacher and that would have not been good. So yeah, that is like, every time I think of clowns, I always think of that moment whenever I like punch my teacher in the face, and I'm very glad that I didn't. Literally scared me. I think I peed a little. Anyways, let's do the outro. So this video means that it is officially 12 days until Halloween. I hope that you are enjoying Shalloween thus far. That's eyeshadow. Sorry, that looks bloody. Oh my. Give this video a thumbs up before you go, because I like it when you like it, and also hit the button down below to subscribe and become a part of my tribe where we like to put makeup on and look beautiful, maybe not today, while discussing things that are ugly. Don't forget to follow me on all of my social medias. It is just Shelly G MUA on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. If you want to follow me on Instagram to see makeup without having to hear me talk, I completely understand. Don't forget to enter my giveaway. The winner will be announced on Halloween day. And yeah, that is all that I have for you today. Be safe out there. If you see a clown, run. They're no joke. Absolutely no joke. I'm gonna go cry now. Love you, bye.